It is Super Bowl 59. The Eagles looking to unseat the two-time defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. But how did they get here? What was the long, winding road to New Orleans like for the Philadelphia Eagles? Always good to just take a step back and, okay, what happened there? How did we get to this point? Well, if we remember, the season actually started a little bit shaky for this team. They beat Green Bay in week 1 on that slippery field out in Brazil. They were able to put up some solid points in that game. It was against the Green Bay Packers defense that we weren't taking seriously, and spoiler alert, would not take seriously for the rest of the year. And then Love gets hurt at the end of the game, preventing what could have been a game-winning drive or something along those lines, right? So it was a win. It was a win against a good team. It was a win with weird conditions, but it still didn't have that real, that you would want from the Philadelphia Eagles in a matchup of two teams that had some money on to go decently far in the NFC this season. We then go to week 2. All right, they're back here in North America. What do we get from them? It's a loss against the Falcons. And remember, the Falcons looked like dog shit week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so you're coming off of that. It's like, what's going on here? What are we doing? Why? How? Also, but why? So a lot of questions. And then it doesn't really get a lot better for them quickly. You have week 3 against the Saints. They win. They controlled a lot of that game, but it ends up just being 15-12. It's like, why can this offense not get clicking in the way that we want it to? Then they get doubled up by the Bucs in week 4. At this point, it's not looking impressive at all. They're 2-2. Hurts has had 2 games under 200 yards passing and 2 above it. And the one of the unders was against a very vulnerable team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so you're just wondering, what is actually going on right now with this football team that is kind of getting in their way. Luckily for them, and I think this was huge for this football team, that bye week came at a perfect time. And if you remember, if you've been tuning into my content since then, A, thank you. B, we were looking at, okay, this might be the time to fire the coach. I thought I was saying in no uncertain terms you have to fire the coach. You have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. How are you not getting the most out of these guys? The guy is doing the bragging and the trash talking and shit. That's fun when you're winning. But this is now a collapse at the end of last season that ends in a pathetic playoff loss. And now you're 2-2 to start this year. What the hell is going on there? So it felt like it was, yeah. It was done. It was over. For Nick Sirianni, get him out of there, get a new voice in, and try to figure this out. The Eagles didn't, so then they have a massive Week 5 game against, sorry, you get choked up thinking about it. They have a massive Week 5 game against the Cleveland Browns, and I remember coming on here and saying, this needs to be an ass-kicking. The Browns are vulnerable. They aren't looking very good. What is happening with this team? The Eagles need to go out there and just beat the brakes off of them. And they won, and it started a run. But at the time, that game didn't look as dominant as I wanted it to either. Again, we said that needed to be an ass kicking. They win 20-16. But then Saquon Barkley gets to face his old team. And I think this was the real turning point of the season for this group. Barkley goes nuts. He goes for 176 yards. It's a 28-3 win, and I think that jump-started things here. I don't know if it was a galvanizing moment to get behind their guy, if that was just a game that everyone kind of had focused on, okay, let's just get to New York, let's get Saquon through this game, and let's move forward. I don't know what it was, but that was the turning point of the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. After that, they beat up the Bengals the next week. Bit too close against the Jags, then they crushed the Cowboys, and they beat the Commanders. It's 6 wins in a row, and it is now an 8-2 record. And then Saquon does it again. He goes for 255 yards against the Rams on Sunday Night Football. In all, they win 10 in a row to move to 12-2, and they are looking like a phenomenal football team. Bit of a banana peel that they slip on as they fall to the Washington Commanders. Hurts gets hurt in that game. They lose by 3 after forcing 5 turnovers. But then they respond. It is a couple of dominant wins in the last 2 weeks of the season that gets them into the playoffs. They start the postseason with a 22-10 win over the Green Bay Packers. If you remember back a month ago, we talked about how that still didn't look the way we needed it to. And a lot of explaining away with Hurts and him being banged up and all of that. I think I still had the first part of the season kind of stuck in my head a little bit more than a little bit of that domination in the middle part of the year. I think that's where I kind of faltered with this Eagles team, is that I didn't give that group enough credit for some of the dominant wins that they had and just those close ones. The Jacksonville game that we mentioned in that streak, the early part of the season against the Packers and against the Saints, where they just can't put these teams away. Those were sticking with me. And so when this one, because it finishes 22-10, it was a one possession game in the fourth quarter. When that's happening, I'm like, guys, this is not. It's a problem. I think there's a problem here. And so we go back and we watch the Rams game, and I'm like, yeah, I think the Rams got him. I think the Rams have a chance to put this one away. And maybe they do if conditions are nicer, but the Eagles are able to win a cold weather game, and that gets them to the conference championship. On the other side of the bracket, the Washington Commanders have upset the Detroit Lions, so now the Eagles have a chance to host the conference championship. And host they did. This team comes alive with a dominant 55-23 win over the Commanders. And honestly, it might be the best that this team has looked all season long. And so that is obviously very good news to be playing probably your best football of the season heading into the Super Bowl. Is it still perfect? No. But they look like a heck of a football team, and they are dominating on the defensive side of the ball. There has been some adversity, and so because of that, there's still some question marks. During that great run, out of nowhere, A.J. Brown starts complaining about the amount of volume that he is getting. And so, yeah, it's a run-first team with some very good pass-catching options. And there's, everyone thought it was kind of cute and funny, but you do get a little bit annoyed with a guy who's reading a book on the sideline in a playoff game. And he's coming out while your team is having success, and he's complaining about the amount of touches that he is getting. Like, spare me. So there's a little bit of frustration with that. There is a little bit of what the heck is going on here, but make no mistake about it. This is the most complete team, in the NFL. And if the quarterback on the other side was anyone else, these guys would be probably pretty heavily favored in this Super Bowl game. Instead, though, they're going up against a quarterback who has gotten them all, including these guys, very recently. So we'll see what happens on Sunday. But it has been quite the journey for the Philadelphia Eagles, one where it hasn't felt as dominant as it could at times. It has felt incredibly dominant at others, and now it does feel like it is hitting its stride at just the right time. More NFL and more Super Bowl coverage coming up throughout the week. Coming up on Thursday, we'll be looking at the Kansas City Chiefs season and how they got to this point.